Hey, and welcome back to Animation Study Group, a series where I, a beginner in animation, encourage you to follow along as we work our way through this, the Animator Survival Kit by Richard Williams. This is episode 3. We're going to be discussing some key terms and notes from the text and animating a pendulum. I took a few notes that are worth getting into before we start the next couple exercises. The first major things in this section of the book are charts and in-betweens. The chart and the in-between were worked out by about 1940, around the time that Pinocchio was released. Charts started out right next to the drawing and eventually moved away from the drawing. There's an example in the book where you see a chart representing the arc of motion as well as the frames in the animation. I'll show you that when we get into the pendulum exercise. The beginning and the end of your chart are going to be your main drawings or your extremes, the starting pose and the ending pose. The drawings between your extremes became known as in-betweens. Your breakdown or passing position is the drawing in the middle of an action, and it's very important to the action. It's going to define how you get from point A to point B, and in the pendulum example, it's the drawing that's going to give the pendulum its arc of motion. Another thing that I wanted to address is ease in and ease out, or slowing in and slowing out, or cushioning. It's in relation to your extreme drawings. So you ease into an extreme or ease out of an extreme. In a previous video, I had it backwards where I talked about easing in and out of the center, which would be the breakdown or passing pose. And it eases into the center. So moving forward, we're going to refer to that the correct way. Now let's get into the pendulum exercise. I prepared 3 charts for this exercise. The one on the screen right now is the simplest. It just has the extremes and the breakdown or the passing pose. We'll have the start of the arc, the passing pose on the 3rd frame, and the end of the arc up where the 5 is. What I showed here is how charts used to be. This is along with the animation. It shows the arc of motion, and our pendulum is going to follow this exact line. And more modern charts are going to be away from the animation. So we have a more modern chart down below. Based on the book, it seems like I'm doing this correctly up here, but just like with ease in and ease out, I might find out later that this isn't the way to do it. We'll see. The second chart gets a little more complex. We're adding in-betweens where the 2 and the 4 are. And the last chart we're going to work with incorporates ease in and ease out, additional in-betweens. The motion of the pendulum should ease out of your first extreme and ease in to your second extreme. And those additional in-betweens should smooth out the motion a little bit more. The first chart we're going to frame on 3s. The second chart we're going to frame on 2s. And the third chart we're going to frame on 1s. This is just so that the timing of the animation is the same and you can see clearly how the different charts affect the pendulum's motion. I'm going to try something a little bit different this time. I'm going to throw this in fast motion, animate all 3 of these, and at the end I'll review all of them at the same time so we can see how they all look, how they're different. All right, let's get to it. Okay, that does it. That's our 3 different pendulums. You'll notice at some point in that time lapse that I realized animating the second one on 2s wasn't going to line up correctly. I still think this exercise served its purpose as it is. Let's take a look at these pendulums swinging left to right. And then at the end, I'll take the most complex one, the 1 through 9 animated on ones, and I'll make that loop so it goes left to right and back, right to left. First one is the most simple. You've got your two extremes and you've got your passing pose. The motion's pretty jagged. You just see that pendulum sort of darting across the screen. Up next, we've got our example with in-betweens. Motion is starting to smooth itself out. It's starting to look a little bit more natural. Last up, we've got our most complex chart. 1 through 9 animated on ones with ease out and ease in. That motion definitely looks the best to me. There are some inconsistencies in the drawing itself that cause it to kind of warp over time. That's just me being a beginner. That's going to get better over time. Now I'm going to take this last animation. I'm going to duplicate the frames on the opposite side. And I'm also going to see how this looks slowed down. The animation is pretty fast as it is, and I think I'll just be able to absorb how this looks if we switch it to 2s or switch it to 3s. I'm going to jump ahead and we'll take a look at that. Over in the level editor, I was able to use the swing function to highlight my animation frames and duplicate them, but in reverse order. So it was pretty simple to make this pendulum swing back the other way. Let's see how it looks. To my eye, I think it probably could use a little more hang time on the extreme poses. Maybe I'll add that in and try that out. Okay, we've got our pendulum swinging back and forth. We've got in-betweens. We've got our extreme poses at 1 and 9, our breakdown at 5. It eases out and eases in. Let's see how it looks slowed down. Let's reframe the whole thing on 2s and take a look. And here's the pendulum reframed on 2s. I like this motion a little bit better. It's a little slower and a little more gradual. That's going to do it for this episode of Animation Study Group. As always, thanks for tuning in. If you're following along, it would be great to see your examples of these exercises. Be sure to tune in next week. I've started preparing for the next exercise in the book, and it's going to be a doozy. So I'm excited and nervous to put that one together. Thanks again. Take care.